This week on ICN, the stories you should have heard, but didn't. The Fed cranks up the printing press. Gold, silver, and food prices going up. Naked shorts get taken to the courts. Those stories and more next on Informed Citizen News. Hello and welcome to ICN, Informed Citizen News, week of November 8th, 2010. This past week, the Fed announced they will buy up to $900 billion of government bonds over the next 12 months. The Federal Reserve will create the money out of thin air that will be used to buy these bonds. Countries around the world reacted with swift condemnation. The German finance minister stated that the U.S. has been living on borrowed money too long. China indicated that they will need to further insulate themselves from the dollar. Brazil went so far as to say that the United States has taken the next step in a currency war and, quote, "This is the type of move that led to World War II." With this desperate move, the Fed has told the world that there is nothing left in its bag of tricks. History has shown that once a country adopts inflation as a monetary policy, it never ends well. In reaction to the Fed's latest move, Ron Paul has said on the first day of the new Congress he will reintroduce a bill to audit the Fed in January. With last week's election, Paul will likely find more allies to help him push the badly needed bill to a vote. A bright light needs to be shed on the secret actions the Fed has taken with other central banks. The Fed has just committed $1 trillion of U.S. taxpayer money with no accountability. The very idea goes against transparent, representative government. A commercial sponsored by the group Citizens Against Government Waste was deemed by ABC, A&E, and the History Channel as too controversial. Take a look and judge for yourself.
Why 什么强大的国家都会走向灭亡呢？古希腊、罗马帝国、不列颠帝国、美国，因为他们都犯同样的错误，与原来使得他们成功的原则背道而驰。美国政府企图以庞大的开支和税收来摆脱严重的经济衰退，巨额的所谓刺激开支。 庞大的医疗改革，政府接管私有企业，债务累累。当然，我们是他们的大债主。现在他们都得给我们干活。
You can change the future. You have to. Join Citizens Against Government Waste to stop the spending that is bankrupting America.
Why do you think these networks wouldn't air this commercial? Clearly, an unpleasant take on our future, but worthy of banning from the public? Gold has had a tremendous run-up over the last month, year, and even the last decade. At $1,400 an ounce, some experts are saying it's a bubble that's ready to burst. Gold is an inverse indicator of currency strength. When a currency is strong, then it will take less of that currency to buy gold. As a currency weakens, it takes more of that currency to buy the same amount of gold. When looking at it in those terms, it's not surprising to have seen gold rise from $300 to $1,400 an ounce during the toughest U.S. economy since the Great Depression. Economist and investor Peter Schiff predicted the bursting of the housing bubble and subsequent moves by the government to prop up the banks and the economy. He has said in many interviews over the past few years that gold will keep going up as long as the Fed has an inflationary monetary policy.
Nobody's going to want to buy U.S. government bonds, again, because we can't pay anybody back. The way the U.S. government operates is we borrow money, and then when the interest payments are due, we borrow the money to pay the interest, and when the principal comes due and the bonds mature, we borrow the money to cover that. It's one gigantic Ponzi scheme, and it depends on an ever-increasing supply of people willing to loan us money and hope that there's going to be a greater fool willing to loan us even more so we can pay it back. Eventually it's going to fall apart. I think it's already happening right now. I think the jig is up on this, and I think the race to get out of the U.S. bond market has already begun. And you don't want to be the last one in and get caught holding the bag.
If the dollar does make a comeback, if the world considers its current moves and its future moves to be serious about stopping inflation, to not lower the interest rates anymore, will gold continue to go up?
The dollar's not going to make a comeback. I don't care how much they talk it up. It's going to continue to sink.
That's not what I asked. If it does, if the dollar does hold its value.
It's impossible for that to happen. You know, you might as well ask me, you know, if pigs sprout wings, can they fly? The dollar's not going to go up.
Paul Volcker did stop inflation back in the 80s.
Right.
It's possible to do it.
No.
If Bernanke does it, will gold continue to go up?
No, he can't. What did Volcker do? He put interest rates at 20%.
Up to 20%.
All right, is Ben Bernanke going to put interest rates at 20%?
So far he hasn't.
Yeah, and if he did, would our economy completely collapse if we had 20% interest?
It didn't back in the 80s.
Well, because we didn't have a $10 trillion national debt financed with T-bills.
We had a lot of debt compared to the GNP.
No.
It was still substantial.
Back in 1980, the national debt was, majority of it was 30-year government bonds, and it was owned by other Americans. Now the debt is majority T-bills, 2-year T-bills owned by the Saudis and the Chinese and the Japanese. It is a huge difference. There were no adjustable rate mortgages. Basically, the Fed no longer has the tools to defend the dollar. All it can do is debase it.
When do you think gold will be $5,000 an ounce? How long from now?
Well, I mean, I don't know exactly when. I don't have a crystal ball to know the exact date.
Ballpark figure.
I don't know. Probably before the end of maybe the next presidential term. So for 5 years from now, it could be up there.
And if you remember from that original book, the crash that I wrote about is not the one that we already had, but the one that we're about to have. I talked about the collapse of the housing market and the greatest recession since the Great Depression that would hit. But what I said, the real crisis was going to come as a result of the government's cure, that we wouldn't die from the disease, but the cure. It's the stimulus that's the problem. It's all this money printing. Yep. Yes, you're seeing it in gold, and you said earlier, gold has no value. It is money. It is a store of savings. If people don't want to spend their money, if they want to save it, they can't hold dollars. They have to hold gold. Gold can preserve your wealth. But the fact that gold prices are rising, every commodity on this earth that is either mined or grown or is rising in price. The dollar is at record lows today against the Australian dollar, against the Singapore dollar, against the Swiss franc, and it's going to go a lot lower because of what the government is doing. And this is bankrupting America. It is forcing every American citizen to take a pay cut. And all these goods that we're importing, they're all going to get more expensive because of a diminished dollar. I mean, these prices, I think, are just going to go higher and higher and higher.
$13.79 is a bargain for gold.
Absolutely. Buy it.
That's $1,379 an ounce. It was $400 5 years ago.
Yes, and I was buying it 5 years ago. I was buying it at $250
then why
10
don't you
years
sell
ago.
to the people that want to buy it at $13.79?
I'm not selling them my gold. I'm still buying. I'm working as a dealer. I go and buy it in the market and resell it to clients. The price, I think, is going to go up because it's not gold going up. It's just the dollar losing value. And the more we print, the more value they're going to lose. That's what quantitative easing is. It's printing money. So money loses value. So get rid of it before it does.
One of the more important points that Mr. Schiff raises is when inflation in gold hit a high in the late 1970s, the Fed attacked inflation head-on and raised interest rates above 14%. No one wanted to borrow money at those rates, and therefore new money was not being created. That was palatable back then, as most U.S. government debt was in 10- and 30-year treasuries, which insulated the government from rising rates. Now our national debt is financed using shorter-term bonds, which have to be rolled over more frequently. This puts the Fed in a box where they can't raise interest rates without blowing up the payments to service our national debt. If increasing interest rates is off the table for the Fed to combat inflation, then the price of commodities, like gold, will only increase over time as the dollar gets diluted. Inflation is defined as a general rise of prices due to the increase of money supply. Food retailers like grocery stores and restaurants will be increasing prices across the board this year. Walmart's executive vice president of grocery merchandise said it would be difficult to hike retail prices because demand remains weak. A clear indicator that supply-demand dynamics are not forcing higher prices. A soup maker says his cost for vegetable oils, sugar, dried beans, and other ingredients jumped 20 to 30% in the last 2 months alone. Supply and demand can affect prices in specific sectors, but inflation has always been, and always will be, a monetary phenomenon that drives general prices up. JPMorgan and HSBC face charges of manipulating the silver markets in violation of federal commodities and racketeering laws, according to a new lawsuit filed Tuesday in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. The suit alleges that the two banks colluded to manipulate the silver markets starting in the first half of 2008 by amassing huge short positions they had no intention of filling, but did so to force silver prices down to their benefit. According to the complaint, JPMorgan amassed this sizable short position of silver futures and options, in part through its March 2008 acquisition of investment bank Bear Stearns. By August 2008, JPMorgan and London-based HSBC controlled more than 85% of the commercial net short position in silver futures contracts. This relates to a story we covered earlier this year, where a London-based independent metals trader named Andrew Maguire claimed that the silver futures market was being manipulated. On two separate occasions, Mr. Maguire provided the Commodities, Futures, and Trade Commission advance warning of market manipulation by JPMorgan and HSBC. He informed the CFTC when and how JPMC used trading patterns to drive down silver prices by naked shorting, a trading method of selling something you don't actually own. Taking on JPMorgan and HSBC in court is a tall order. We'll report on this case as it develops. The American Policy Center, an independent foundation that advocates for private property rights and individual privacy, had an expose on the revolving door in Washington. The article describes how certain government officials awarded contracts to private companies while in office, and later found high-paying positions with those same companies shortly after leaving their government jobs. The article goes over more details than we can cover here, but companies profiled in the report are in the business of providing driver's licenses to states and facial recognition databases for security. The story is available in our news source links and is worth checking out. Costa Mesa, California became the first city to ban mercury dental fillings. Originally developed before the Civil War, the mercury-based filling is a neurotoxin. It's only recently that physicians have used chelation techniques to measure levels of previously undetectable mercury as it was being expelled from the body. Testimony before the Costa Mesa City Council stated that mercury fillings are an outdated technology and can be easily substituted with more modern, less toxic compounds. The resolution was passed and will be circulated to nearby cities, states, and relevant federal agencies in the hopes that similar bans will be adopted. And finally, a beautiful sunset off the coast of Los Angeles was interrupted by what appeared to be a missile or rocket propelling into the sky. Neither the U.S. Navy, Air Force, nor the North American Air Defense Command claimed they knew what it was. It appeared to rise up from the ocean and head out over the water in a northwesterly direction. Some experts suggested that it was just the contrail of a jetliner coming in over the Pacific, while others say it has the unmistakable signs of a ballistic missile launch from a submarine. There are only about 10 aircraft arriving across the Pacific during the sunset hours. One would think that NORAD would easily be able to link it to a scheduled passenger jet based on its location, altitude, and timing. With no definitive answer from the Defense Department, wide-ranging theories are being circulated. Theories ranging from a foreign country sneaking a sub off our coast to send a message to our government, to a conspiratorial false flag operation to unsettle the populace. With each day that passes, we may never find out what was streaking across the sky. For now, I guess we'll have to refer to it as an unidentified flying object. Thanks for joining us this week. Please share our channel with your friends and family. From all of us at Informed Citizen News, have a good week.